16. What recognition is has already been explained. We will now enumerate its kinds. First, the least artistic form, from which poverty of wit is most commonly employed by recognition by signs. Of these, some are congenital, such as the spear of which the earthborn race bear on their bodies, or the stars introduced by Copernicus in his thesis. Others are acquired after birth. Of these, some are bodily marks, as scars, some external tokens, as necklaces, or the little arc in the material by which the discovery is effected. Even these admit of more or less skillful treatment. Thus, in the recognition of Odysseus by his scar, the discovery is made in one way by the nurse, in another by the swineherds. The use of tokens for the express purpose of proof, and indeed any formal proof with or without tokens, is a less artistic mode of recognition. A better kind is that which comes about by turn of incident, as in the bath scene in the Odyssey. Next come the recognitions invented at will by the poets, and on that account wanton in art. For example, Orestes in the Insignia reveals the fact that he is Orestes. She indeed makes herself known by the letter, but he by speaking and saying what the poet, not the plot, requires. This, therefore, is nearly allied to the fault above mentioned, for Orestes might as well have brought tokens with them. Another similar instance is the voice of the shuttle in the Tires of Sophocles. The third kind depends on memory, when the sight of some object awakens the feeling, as the Cyprians in the Decogenes, where the hero breaks into tears on seeing the picture, or again in the Lay of Alcinous, where Odysseus, hearing the minstrel play the lyre, recalls the past and weeps, and hence the recognition. The fourth kind is by process of reasoning. Thus in the Chephori, some resembling me has come. No one resembles me but Orestes, therefore Orestes has come. Such too is the discovery made by Iphigenia in the play of Polydius the Sophist. It was a natural reflection for Orestes to make. So I too must die at the altar like my sister. So again, in Tedious of Theodictes, the father says, I have come to find my son, and I lose my own life. So too in the Phinidae, the women, on seeing the place, inferred their fate. Here we are doomed to die, for we were cast forth. Again, there is a composite kind of recognition involving a false inference on the part of one of the characters, as in the Odysseus disguised as a messenger. A said that no one else was able to bend the bow, hence B, the disguised Odysseus, imagined that A would recognize the bow, which in fact he had not seen, and to bring about a recognition by this means that the expectation A would recognize the bow is a false inference. But of all recognition, the best is that which arises from the incidents themselves, where the startling discovery is made by natural means, such as that in the Oedipus of Sophocles, and in the Insignia, for it was natural that Insignia should wish to dispatch a letter. These recognitions alone dispense with the artificial aid of tokens or amulets. Next come the recognitions by process of reasoning. Chapter 17. In constructing the plot and working it out with the proper diction, the poet should place the scene as far possible before his eyes. In this way, seeing everything with the utmost vividness, as if he were a spectator of the action, he will discover what is in keeping with and be most unlikely to overlook inconsistencies. The need of such a rule is shown by the fault found in the Copernicus. Amphiaraus was on his way from the temple. The fact escaped observation of one who did not see the situation. On the stage, however, the piece failed, the audience being offended at the oversight. Audiences will pretty much always be offended by oversight. You know, you want to keep your story consistent and coherent, but you also want to keep it somewhat true to reality. You know, if you're writing a scene and there's some mechanic stuff going on, do your research. You do not want to write a scene where you're making up stuff and people out there are spending their entire lives dedicated to that, right? They'll tolerate a little bit of like misunderstanding, but you always do research. Again, the poet should work out his play to the best of his power with appropriate gestures. For those who feel emotion are most convincing through natural sympathy with the characters they represent, and one who is agitated storms, one who is angry rages with the most lifelike reality. Hence, poetry implies either a happy gift of nature or a strain of madness. In the one case, a man can take the mold of any character. In the other, he is lifted out of his proper self. As for the story, whether the poet takes it ready-made or constructs it for himself, he should first sketch out its general outline and then fill in the episodes and amplify in detail. The general plan may be illustrated by the insignia. A young girl is sacrificed. She disappears mysteriously from the eyes of those who sacrificed her. She is transported to another country where the custom is to offer up all strangers to the goddess. To this ministry she is appointed. Sometime later, her own brother chances to arrive. The fact that the oracle for some reason ordered him to go there is outside the general plan of the play. The purpose again of his coming is outside the action proper. However he comes, he is seized, and when on the point of being sacrificed, reveals who he is. The mode of recognition may be either that of Euripides or Polydius, in whose play he exclaims very naturally, "So it was not my sister only, but I too who was doomed to be sacrificed," and by that remark he is saved. That kind of sounds like to me like you'll have a story and then you'll have different poets telling this story, almost like a story and different directors taking it on, right? Like Euripides and Polydius must be different poets. After this, the names being once given, it remains to fill in the episodes. We must see that they are relevant to the action. In the case of Orestes, for example, there is the madness which led to his capture and his deliverance by the means of purificatory rite. In the drama, the episodes are short, but it is these that give extension to epic poetry. Thus, the story of the Odyssey can be briefly stated. A certain man is absent from home for many years. He is jealously watched by Poseidon and left desolate. Meanwhile, his home is in a wretched plight. Suitors are wasting his substance and plotting against his son. At length, tempest-tossed, he arrives himself. He makes certain persons acquainted with him. He attacks the suitors with his own hand, and is himself preserved while he destroys them. This is the essence of plot. The rest is episode. Chapter 18. Every tragedy falls into two parts: complication and unraveling, or denouement. Incidents extraneous to the action are frequently combined with a portion of the action proper to form the complication. The rest is the unraveling. By complication, I mean all that extends from the beginning of the action to the part which marks the turning point from good or bad fortune. The unraveling is that which extends from the beginning of the change to the end. Thus, in the Lynicus of Poetics, the complication consists of the incidents presupposed in the drama, the seizure of the child, and then again the unraveling extends from the accusation of murder to the end. There are four kinds of tragedy: the complex, dependent entirely on the reversal of the situation and recognition; the pathetic, where the motive is passion, such as the tragedies on Ajax and Ixion; the ethical, where the motives are ethical, such as the Phthiotides and the Peleus. The fourth kind is the simple. We here exclude the purely spectacular element, exemplified by the Phorcides, the Prometheus, and the scenes laid in Hades. The poet should endeavor, if possible, to combine all poetic elements, or fail in that the greatest number, and those the most important, the more so, in face of the cavalion of criticism of the day. For whereas there have hitherto been good poets, each in his own branch, the critics now expect one man to surpass all others in their several lines of excellence. And, that will probably always be true. That's kind of like, almost an expectation from the compounding effect. People spend their entire lives working at one thing, they master it, they teach it to the next person. That person starts from being learned from a level of mastery. They spend their lives, they master it, and then they teach the next person who starts from that person. So, there's a certain expectation that makes it reasonable to have that high standard. In speaking of tragedy as the same or different, the best test is to take the plot. Identity exists where the complication and unraveling are the same. Many poets taught the knot well, but unravel it ill. Both arts, however, should always be mastered. Again, the poet should remember what has been often said, and not make an epic structure into a tragedy. By an epic structure, I mean one with a multiplicity of plots, as if, for instance, you were to make a tragedy out of the entire story of the Iliad. In the epic poem, owing to its length, each part assumes its proper magnitude. In the drama, the result is far from answering to the poet's expectation. The proof is that the poets who have dramatized the whole story of the fall of Troy, instead of selecting proportions like Euripides, or who have taken the whole tale of Niobe and not part of her story like Aeschylus, either fail utterly or meet with poor success on the stage. Even Agathon has been known to fail from this one defect. In his reversals of the situation, however, he shows a marvelous skill in the effort to hit the popular taste, to produce a tragic effect that satisfies the moral sense. This effect is produced when the clever rogue, like Sisyphus, is outwitted, or the brave villain defeated. Such an event is probable in Agathan's sense of the word, it is probable. He says that many things should happen contrary to probability. The chorus, too, should be regarded as one of the actors. It should be an integral part of the whole and share in the action, in the manner not of Euripides, but of Sophocles. As for the later poets, the choral songs pertain as little to the subject of the piece as to that of any other tragedy. They are, therefore, sung as mere interludes, a practice first began by Agathon. Yet what difference is there between introducing such choral interludes and transferring a speech or even a whole act from one play to another? Chapter 19. It remains to speak of diction and thought. The other parts of tragedy having already been discussed. Concerning thought, we may assume what is said in the rhetoric, to which inquiry the subject more strictly belongs. Under thought is included every effect which has to be produced by speech, the subdivisions being proof and refutation, the excitation of the feelings, such as pity, fear, anger, and the like, the suggestion of importance or its opposite. Now it is evident that the dramatic incidences must be treated from the same points of view as dramatic speeches, when the object is to evoke the sense of pity, fear, importance, or probability. The only difference is that the incidents should speak for themselves without verbal exposition, while the effects aimed at in speech should be produced by the speaker and as a result of the speech. For what were the business of a speaker if the thoughts were revealed quite apart from what he says? Next, as regards diction. Next, as regards to diction, one branch of the inquiry treats the modes of utterance, but this province of knowledge belongs to the art of delivery and to the masters of that science. It includes, for instance, what is a command, a prayer, a statement, a threat, a question, an answer, and so forth. To know or not to know these things involves no serious censure upon the poet's art, for who can admit the fault imputed to Homer by Protagoras, that in the words, "Sing goddess of wrath," he commands under the idea that he utters a prayer? For to tell someone to do a thing or not to do it, he says, a command. We may therefore pass this over as an inquiry that belongs to another art, not to poetry. It almost sounds like there's more out there to learn about the storytelling. And I know that in the literary arts, Aristotle's Poetics is fundamental. It's like an essential part of the process of getting into the arts, the literary arts. And I can't help but wonder what he's talking about when he says things like that's of a different science. Like maybe there's other treatises out there that we still use today. I don't know. I guess I'll find out. If you know, please mention in the comments there. I'm going to stop it there and get to the next one.